Hi everyone, guten Tag. It's great to be talking to all of you. I wish I were there in person. Um, but it's been great listening to all the talks so far. Uh, so my talk is called Fixing Wikidata by Viewing It as a Series of Tables. So here's a little bit about me. You can read that on your own. I want to talk now about a topic I'm actually not involved with at all, which is Wikidata, but which I find fascinating. So you probably all know all about it already, but it was created by Denny Vrandicic with assistance from Marcus Critch and many others. Um, uh, it's a massive repository of actually over 1 billion facts, which are called statements because there's no guarantee that any of them are correct. Um, uh, and it's highly multilingual, highly referenced. Each of those statements, in theory, is supposed to have at least one reference. Um, It happens to be the greatest store of general knowledge data in world history, in my opinion, although I don't think there's any real other contenders for that, which is unbelievable. Um, and it runs on MediaWiki and a set of extensions collectively called Wikibase. Um, so yeah, here's Wikidata for those who haven't seen it. We'll get to some of the details of it later. And then here is Wikibase. It's got its own domain, uh, and it's a set of open source extensions to MediaWiki. Um, so the goals of Wikidata, as far as I can tell, I mean, an obvious one is to serve as a backend for Wikipedia's infobox data. I mean, there's 200 plus languages of Wikipedia. Each one is storing the same set of data in theory for each article. So it makes much more sense to store it all in one place um, than that to have all the duplication. And actually, I should have. Well, yeah, fine. Potentially, it could be a backend for other parts of Wikipedia, like categories and tables, which similarly involve an enormous amount of duplication. There's also interlanguage links, which I should have mentioned, which it does serve as a backend for, and that was Marcus covered that in the keynote actually. Um, It's meant to be a queryable resource for other sites via fixed queries. You send out your Sparkle query and you get back your set of data, and you can display all the countries in South America, that sort of thing. Um, and then of course it provides a Sparkle endpoint so you can do on the fly querying to get information. Um, and an interesting one is that each QID can serve as a general QID. So, instead of using different ontologies or and so forth for different sets of knowledge, you have a single ID authority that potentially can be used for anything. Sort of a universal indicator. Um, so let's go through these goals. I think the only true successes are the first, and from what I am told, the last one. Um, it's not being used for categories, tables, and that sort of thing on Wikipedia and other Wikimedia sites. Although I guess that was never that was never a real goal. Um, the big where it really has not lived up to its potential, I think, is in terms of Sparkle querying. That the Sparkle querying capability exists, but I haven't seen it used that much. And that's where I think there's really potential for improvement. Um, so yeah, I mean, here's a standard view of the semantic web from 2009 or whenever the peak was. You've got entities pointing to each other with different properties. Um, I don't think this makes sense as a way to view or structure data. And yes, I'm aware there was a talk earlier today where that showed sort of mind map display like this one. That's I remain with this view. Um, I feel that tables are better than graphs. I mean, the idea is if a set of objects are all of the same type or class, then the set of fields for each one should be more or less the same. Um, so the whole idea, well, yeah, so no object is special, basically. If an object has a field that none else do, it's not really data at all. Um, the whole the benefit of data comes from aggregation and a consistent structure. So to me, knowledge is inherently structured and not free form. Um, so yeah, going back to this display, I mean, the problem with this kind of approach is that you can allow just arbitrary arrows for each entity, and it quickly becomes chaotic. Um, but isn't Wikidata structured as a graph in the first place? Not really, although it can be queried via, an RDF graph database. But in any case, the issue to my mind is the user interface and the querying interface and display and editing, not the actual structure of the data itself. Um, so Wikidata does have structure. It's not totally unstructured. It's not just, random set of uh, uh, balls and arrows and the typical graph approach. Um, Here's an example. The structure is enforced via warning. So here's an example of a page about a book. Somebody added to it the genre Indonesia literature in the period 1950 to 1965. Um, and so next to that is this little warning icon. If you click on it, it says genre statements, this value, Indonesia literature, etc., is supposed to be an instance of one of these subclasses like genre. And it's not. I don't know what it is, but it's not considered one of those. So this makes a lot of sense as a constraint. Um, so yeah, so that was a constraint on the property value. This one, um, it shows up in an item about a song. And even though it shows up next to the value, it's actually complaining about the property itself, record label. It's saying songs don't have a record label, only, um, albums or physical releases of that song have a record label. In this case, it would have been solved, I think, if they had added instance of single to the item, so it's not just a song but also a single, like a physical release. Um, yeah, so just more on the concept of free form versus structure. The original concept of semantic MediaWiki was something like this: you have some information about the saxophone, so you can just start typing property tags. Yeah, you can write anything about anything. It's useless in terms of creating a set of text and data that a lot of people can edit together, because there's no way to know what to write or actually what to query about anything. And yes, I'm aware there was a talk earlier today where the wiki is used in exactly this way with freeform tagging. But I don't think that really can work if you have a whole community of people editing it. So yeah, nowadays it's almost always done via templates. So you have a template maybe called instrument, and you have a field, so it can be predefined, and then you can create forms around that and so forth. Um, so you can think of each call to such template as defining a row of a table. And here's my view of I guess spectrum from less structure to more structure as far as MediaWiki data storage options, the most well-known ones. Um, So yeah, cargo is at the is the most structured of these. Um, yeah, I mean, just briefly, as far as cargo, it has a number of advantages over Semantic MediaWiki or Wikibase for that matter. But one obvious one is because there's a built-in structure you get out of the box display and navigation. So let me just quickly show a demonstration of that here. Um, this is just a random wiki that uses cargo, the critical care and medicine database. So yeah, all of this comes out of the box. Once you have this set of cargo tables defined, then you can see right here in this sort of interface that special cargo tables, the entire layout of the data. And then if you click on let's say indicators, for example, then you can, scroll through and browse all the data to get a sense of what's going on in this wiki. Uh, and similarly, you can the drill down comes for free also. You don't have to define filters and so on. Um, yeah, keep going like that. So that gets us to Wikidata Walkabout, which is a site that provides actually a very similar kind of drill down interface for Wikidata itself. Um, it runs on an open source JavaScript application called Anvesha, which can actually be used on any Wikibase installation. Um, I designed it. There's another guy, Sahaj Khandelwal, who programmed it, and it came out in 2020. Um, so how do I? How annoying! How do I get out of this top navigation thing? All right. Um, Yeah, so here's Wikidata Walkabout, wikidatawalkabout.org. So if I go through, let me see. Uh, I can click on museum. That finds me all museums within Wikidata, and I can filter on various filters. Um, so and then I keep going. Um, Date of official opening has special handling for dates. It does it first for centuries and then decades and so on. So let's see. So this is all the museums that in Germany that opened in the 19th century. Um, and it's multilingual, so I can see the same information in German, for example, um, and keep going that way, or even what language is this? Chinese. Uh, if any of these had translations into had oh, some of them do. Some of them have Chinese uh translations and for their names. So yeah, I can click on any of these. This will get me to Wikidata, and in this case, as with Chinese as the interface. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just a let me try getting this back to English. Um, it's just a really easy way to go through Wikidata's data. Um, um, so how does it work? It treats Wikidata as a set of tables. There's a property called instance of that indicates what classes, i.e., tables, every item belongs to. So you can think of that as setting the rows of each table. And then there's another property called properties for this type, which is applied to classes, and that indicates the standard fields for each class. So all of these filters here are the values of properties of this type, properties for this type for the museum class. And actually, it's a subset. There's going to be a bunch more properties for this type, things like uh, uh, IDs, museum directory IDs, and so forth. This only uses the ones that are of the correct types, i.e., string, page, date, that sort of thing. The ones that make sense to filter on. So yeah, you can think of that as setting the columns for each table, and then once you have that combination of those two properties, then you have your set of tables on Wikidata. Um, so it's interesting the use of instance of for people, it's very well defined. Everything, just about every person is an instance of just human and nothing else, which is fantastic. They don't apply things like woman, dentist, Cuban, and so forth. All kinds of ways that the data can get more unnecessarily complicated. Um, there's a very poorly maintained class, which is cities, which it's ironic that Robert in the previous talk was talking about cities, because that one is actually hard to find, to create a list of all the cities in Wikidata, because there's there seems to be an almost pathological desire to not label cities as city. And actually, could just to prove the point, could someone type into the chat just a name of just a random city in the world, and I'll try to go there in Wikidata, so you can see hopefully what I'm talking about. All right, I'll go with the last one, Utrecht. Yeah, it's so weird. So this one is a municipality of the Netherlands and cycling city. It's unbelievable. Sometimes you'll have, let me try a different one just for the heck of it. Salisbury, Massachusetts. Sometimes there's six or seven different instances that are all, something. Here we go. Well, this one might not be a city well, New England town. Yeah, it should be town or something. Um, Sometimes you'll see six or seven something cities, some subset of city, but not just the word city or town. Um, I don't understand it. Maybe there's some reason for it, or whoever is enforcing human for everyone is not bothering with city, but that seems to be actually maybe the worst in terms of the fragmentation of data. Um, Yeah, and you can keep going. It's actually pretty entertaining to look at all the different synonyms, things that people use instead of using city. Um, so yeah, I mean, hopefully a more structured approach will lead to a virtuous cycle. Um, so if there's a more consistent use of classes, then the tools that take a structured approach and make use of that instance of thing will become more useful, which in turn will convince editors to put things into more consistent classes and so on. That's the hope. Yeah, so back to Wikidata Walkabout. What's it for, really? I mean, you can just do general browsing to get a sense for what the data is like, and I think it's pretty interesting to go through. How do you hide the thing at the top? Wish I could remember. Um, to go through and see what the data looks like. Here's collection or exhibition size. Okay, well, this one doesn't have that much data for it, which is actually also interesting to see. Which properties need more tending to. Um, it can help you in finding specific facts. If you know that if you're looking for some museum and you know that it is in some city and it covers some, it's a modern art or something, then it can help you find that specific museum. Um, it's actually also interesting as a Sparkle query builder. Um, very few people are going to learn Sparkle. Um, What's going on here? Okay. Um, yeah. So if I want to get this set of 27 museums every time, I can click on View Sparkle Query, and it will generate this whole sparkle here. So now I can modify it and so forth, but I can just view it, and it will produce that same list. Um, okay, so that covers browsing, but what about editing? How can Wikidata editing be improved if you think of it as a set of tables? Um, well, you may have guessed already, but structured forms is how I think it can be done. Um, Again, we can use that combination of instance of and properties for this type to determine what the standard fields are for each item. But in addition to that, there are various constraints that can help also. We saw above the warnings that come about due to those constraints. Um, so yeah, so the one example we saw was for the genre property. The reason that warning came up is because the genre property itself has a subject type constraint listing all those, whatever it was, 10 different classes. So basically that sets the allowed values, and potentially you could do auto completion and so forth based on that. Everything that fits the genre property, which is presumably mostly genres, things that are classified as genre, can get auto completed on. Um, and Another example is allowed qualifiers constraint. Properties can have qualifiers. So, for example, the image property, there are a lot of items that have an image, and you can specify as a qualifier for that age of subject at event, among many other qualifiers. Sorry that this is getting a little abstract, but basically it lets you define related fields. So if you know that, for example, every building should have an image property, then you can see the image property. If the image property is there, then there should also be, uh, some set of other properties additionally in the form. So here's just an example of this is just a mock-up um, of what such a form could look like. This is in addition to, not instead of, the main editing interface. There would always be a main editing interface that lets users do, all the many things that the Wikidata um, editing interface allows. The big thing that's missing here, well, one big thing is the lack of references, um, and potentially makes sense to have to allow to have a small input for the reference for each thing. There's a trade-off between flexibility and ease of use. Um, but I think there can be some approach that's easy to use, that's easy enough to use and doesn't overwhelm people. Um, but still allows for the majority of what the average user would want to edit within Wikidata. So you can see here, well, yeah, anytime there's a little down arrow, that's supposed to indicate that it's a kind of combo box or tokens input or something where there can be auto completion. And here you can see examples of potentially those related fields. In this case, for image, these are point in time and creator. These are two other constraint qualifier constraint things for the image property. So that's the basic idea. This is my modest proposal for what could be done in Wikidata, and I think there could be a way to do this as a gadget, as a JavaScript gadget, so that it wouldn't require buy-in from the Wikidata developers. But it's just something that users could install on their own and use to make edits on Wikidata in addition to, the main set of edits. Oh yeah, and you can see here this little upload file link. That's another nice convenience that it's currently lacking on Wikidata. So yeah, so potentially each room is the instance, is the class that this, you know, fictional item belongs to. So there potentially could be a tab for each, for the fields for each class that a certain item belongs to. That's just one idea. Um, Entity schemas is a kind of obscure thing that's implemented on Wikidata. Uh, I don't think it's that useful compared to the use of the properties that I've explained already. Here's an example of an entity schema for human, so you can see what I'm talking about. This I didn't know about this until recently. Um, it yeah, I mean it basically defines what the human class is supposed to look like. You can see one interesting thing here, but for most of the time it's just a question mark, asterisk, that kind of thing. Um, you can see one interesting thing here for gender. It's kind of a big political topic these days. How many genders are there? Are there two? Or are there any number? But now we know the answer. There are 33. Uh, that's the official number. Um, yeah, there's one interesting thing besides that, which is there's a question mark if it's supposed to have just one value, and an asterisk if it's supposed to have any number of values, like you can only have one place of birth, um, and so on. But I think even this uh, doesn't doesn't reflect the nature of Wikidata, because you can actually have more than one place of birth defined for a person if they're conflicting sources. Um, so, I mean, really, any field can have more than one value, um, which actually is maybe something that should be reflected in such a form that everything is essentially should be a tokens input in one way or another, um, or have a plus sign next to it, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's definitely something that uh, is open for discussion or possibilities. Um, what about Wikibase? I mentioned it before. Anyone can actually run their own Wikibase installation and make their own Wikidata-like site. Please don't do that. Um, I would guess the average person who installs Wikibase has never heard of Cargo or Semantic MediaWiki, which is why they're using Wikibase. Basically, unless you're running an extremely multilingual uh, site, I don't think it makes sense to use it. Um, if you do use Wikibase, though, please check out the enhanced Wikibase suite that I and the people at WikiWorks put together. Um, it's a it's basically a proposal, and it covers a lot of the same stuff that I talked about here. It's yeah, it covers well, I'll get to it, but it has that same mock-up there. So the basic idea is you can already use the external data extension for inline querying, which is amazingly something that Wikibase lacks. That is, within Wikibase itself, within a Wikibase installation by default, you can't query the data, um, which leads to some crazy outcomes. Here's an example. This is an actual Wikibase installation. So they have here all these museum pieces from 2007, which looks really nice. It's a kind of gallery thing, but amazingly, the source wiki text for this is just this. They just made a list of every single uh, art piece from 2007. Um, and here's a similar one. This is the Europeana Eagle project. So they have all these listings here. Um, yeah, this is everything that belongs that belongs to some collection or something. But if you look at the source for this again, it's painful to look at. It's just a list. This one's actually even slightly worse because they had to hard code the name of each item. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing that in a fully structured uh, set of data, like, well, not fully structured, but in a uh, fully stored set of data like Wikibase, you can't query the data at all. So yeah, actually, using external data, you can access the Sparkle output. And so here I have a demo of various things that you can do. This is all getting data from Wikidata, but in theory, you could get it from any Wikibase installation, including the wiki that you are on. So here's one. It's here. It just gets just a set of specific data here. It's querying and displaying a gallery of all artworks that include a squirrel. And the last one is a map display, which you can do also. This is all buildings in Spain with Baroque architecture. Yeah, so if the people running these other Wikibase installations knew more about MediaWiki capability, they might do well to install external data. Although on the other hand, if they knew more about MediaWiki capability, they probably wouldn't be using Wikibase in the first place. Yeah, and then so you can use Anvesha, the thing behind Wikidata Walkabout, for drill down. You can point it to your own Wikibase installation. And then potentially, if anyone creates it, this editing gadget, and then at that point you have something that functions more or less the way we have come to expect, data-based interfaces on MediaWiki to work. Oh, yeah, and that's it. Yeah, thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Yaron. Is it safe to open my eyes again? I agree. Some ugly things that we don't expect to see. Do we have any questions? No, we don't have any questions over here. Do we have a question online, Bernard?
No.